Aloha and welcome to this practice WAD called Digits CRUD. CRUD stands for Create, Read, Update, Delete. We're not going to do the delete part, so really this could be called Digits CRU, Motley Crew, but we're going to call it Digits CRUD. So prior to doing this WAD, we want to make sure we've merged the previous branch. So I'm just going to pull up this network diagram so you can again see, this is the general idea. The master branch holds kind of the latest version. We'll create these little branches to do the WADs and then merge them back in. That's what you should be doing. And so to start this, we're going to create a branch off master, and it's going to be called CRUD1. Okay. So having done that, and of course that's automatically switched as that branch. I didn't start the timer. Let me do that. Finish, start. Okay, and then we're going to perform QA. So I'll do a propeller shift I, check style, using the custom scope so we don't check the automatically generated thing. No suspicious code found, so check style is passed. We'll do an activator test. Again, the reason why we do QA at the beginning, whenever we start something, is to kind of get you in the habit so that when you're working with others and you pull down their changes from GitHub and you're going to work on something, you check to make sure that you start off with a clean system. And if it's not clean, then you know to fix it. The worst case is you work for a while and then things don't pass and you don't even know whether they were failing when you even got the branch. So it makes it that much harder to work together. Okay, so the test passed, so we're ready to get going. Oh, and also, of course, forgot to say, make sure you've watched this screencast before, because this gives the motivation for the changes that we're making. Essentially, we're going to use this design pattern where we use an ID field that either has a 0 value when we're creating a new contact or a non-zero value when we're creating or when we're editing an existing contact. So in order to do that, we've got to make some changes. We've got to make a private long ID field as part of our contact, and we can do a propeller N to construct a getter for this. And then we can do this command shift down arrow to move it down to the right spot in the class. I just love that. That's just the coolest thing that IntelliJ provides, I think, or not maybe the coolest thing, but it's pretty cool. So returns the ID, so that's the ID value. Of course, we also need to pass in the constructor, this.id equals ID, at param ID, the ID. Okay, so that's the contact, and then contact form data also needs a long ID. So let's go to contact form data. We'll say public long ID, the ID, and then also the contact form data class needs a default no-arg constructor, which play requires. So we can say public contact form data no-arg constructor. Some of the QA tools don't like empty methods, so I generally have this thing of just putting a little comment in there so it's more than one line long. The public no-arg constructor required by play. And then also we have a constructor that accepts a contact. So we're going to say public contact form data contact. And then what that guy's going to do, and it's asking us if that's the one we want, so we say option return to actually do the import, just so you can see there's the imports up there. And so what we'll say then is this dot first name equals contact dot get first name. This dot last name equals contact dot, and it's really quite cool how, as you can see, IntelliJ is actually kind of defaulting to what it assumes is going to be the right accessor for this. It's doing some regular expression match on the field names, which I just think is, you know, quite cool. Look at that, get ID. So so that's pretty nice. So we're going to say constructs a contact form data from a contact, the contact. Okay, so let's see. So that's the step 5. We've got the no order constructor. And then we need to update the contact DB class to use a map to store the contacts indexed by ID, because now we're going to actually be retrieving stuff. So having this contact DB only contain a list is not good, because we need to be able to retrieve things based upon an ID. So the way we can do that is we can say a map long java.util.map, and then we can call this thing a hash map. And that's good. And then now what we have to do is, well, we've got several things we want to change here. Form data.id is what a constructor needs. And instead of saying contacts.add, we have to say contacts.put form data.id. Okay. And then if we look down here, we still need to return a list, even though we've got a map. So how do you do that? And the way you do that in Java is you return a list, the list of values. So that's the actual contact objects, and then you add that as a constructor to the array list, and you get exactly what you need. Okay, so we've somehow invoked the compiler accidentally, but everything should be cool. Okay, so let's see. So here we are in the contact. So we map and to provide a get contact ID method to retrieve a contact based upon this ID. So we need a get contact method. Public static get contact, and takes a long ID, and then it's going to return the associated contact. Jeez. Okay, so we can say contact equals contacts dot get given this ID. Now the question is, what happens if we pass an ID and there's no contact associated with it in the database? Then it's going to return null. What do we want to do in that case? And really what we want to do in that case is throw an exception, because that should never actually happen in this application. So what we can say is, if contact equals null, throw new runtime exception. And I'm throwing an unchecked exception. Could not find the contact with associated ID. Because if this were to actually occur, it means there's a bug in our application. There's no really point in throwing a check exception when you can't handle it in any way. So that's what I think is the best way to handle this. I forgot the return type declaration. So we'll say returns the contact associated with ID, or throws a runtime exception if not found. The ID, the contact. Okay, so that's our get contact method. And now we're going to update the ID contactdb.add method to either create a new contact if the form data value is 0, or else update the previous existing entry if it's not 0. Okay, so we got to go up here, and so what we need to do first is we need to say the ID val that we need. In the event that form data.id equals 0, and I'm going to use these ternary operators because they can collapse a 5 or 7 line if then else into a single line, and my belief is with no loss of clarity, because we're just trying to figure out what to assign to this value based upon a simple condition. Well, in the event that form data.id is 0, that means we have a new contact that we're trying to create. We need to assign it an ID, and so where we can get these ID from is, well, there's a lot of ways to do it, but I think the simplest way is to have a private static long current ID, and we're going to initialize it to 1, and then what we'll do is we'll increment that counter whenever we actually need a new one, and that will be the value that we'll assign to this ID val. So when form ID is 0, we don't have an ID for it, so we're going to create one, and we'll increment this counter so we always get a new one. Otherwise, it's the value that we passed in. Okay, so that's the ID val. That's the ID val that we want, and so all we have to do then is we just update this new contact to use this ID val. Okay, and so what you can see here, the net result of this. So if form ID was 0, create an ID for this new contact before saving. Otherwise, update the pre-existing entry. And that's effectively what we do, because we're getting the form data, and then we're going to do this put with the old ID val, which is going to basically overwrite the pre-existing entry in the context map with this new contact that we just created. Okie dokie. So that's the step 7, to either create a new contact if it's 0, or else update a pre-existing entry. Now I want to update the routes file so that the new contact method takes has an optional parameter ID, and if it's not supplied in our reverse routing, which is going to be the case in the menu, then we're going to give it a default value of 0. Okay. Now we've got to actually fix this to take a long ID. Okay. And we're going to update this controller to take this long ID and either create an empty contact form data class if the pass data value is 0, or one created from the existing contact. Okay, so the notion here is this new contact is going to get invoked in 2 cases now. One where we just want to create a new contact, and another one where we actually want to edit a pre-existing one. Okay, so we can do that in the following way. We can say that if ID equals 0, okay, then we just want an empty contact form data class. Oops. Otherwise, we want to create a contact form data class where we have retrieved and initialized that contact form data class with a contact object from our context database. Okay, so you can see the net result of this line is when ID is not equal to 0, this contact form data is filled with the contact information associated with that ID. Okay? And then, to create a form that's going to have this data in it, we use this play thing we call the fill method, and we pass it in this data object that we just created. Okay. Now we've got a form that's initialized with the data, either empty data or data with a contact, and we're going to render that. Okay, so if all goes according to plan, now our form, in the event that ID is not equal to 0, is going to be filled with the data that we need. Okay, next we need to update new contact scala.html with a hidden input field. Input type equals hidden. And then what we need in here is this name ID value stuff. Okay, but instead of saying first name, we're going to say ID. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's go back there. Okay, I hit the wrong thing. Okay, so that's our hidden field. And then we have to do index.scala. We have to update this to actually have that edit link. And just to make it easier to see what we're doing, let me separate this into separate lines. So we'll say TD, and then we'll say /a href equals, and then we'll have this reverse routing, routes.application.newContact, and then inside there we're going to call the getID method of the contact that we're displaying in that field, which is kind of cool. And then we'll just say edit. Okay. So that's how we add the edit line. And now we're ready to check that our system works by exercising the UI. Okay, so maybe before we do that, we'll do a propeller F9 just to make sure that the system actually compiles. And if it doesn't compile, then we can double click inside this, inside the IDE, and actually find where we've got the problem. Someday this will take 1 second to do. It takes like 10 seconds right now. Okay, so everything compiled fine. So let's call activator run. Okay, so we can go here, and then we go to new contact, and we can say Philip Johnson 222-222-2222. Then we can click add, and then we go to home. Okay, and it shows up. Now let's click our edit, and there it is. And we can say, maybe change me to Jackson, and do add, and then go back to home, and now I'm Philip Jackson. Okay? So that's great. The system appears to work. Let's see that it passes check style. And it doesn't. Okay, so we forgot our @param field. The ID. And then in contact form data, we made some mistakes. Oh, we did this, and we did that. So let's see if we rerun it now. Jeez, I missed something. Okay. Okay, no suspicious code found. All right, and then we can do a Control-C activator test. And the test pass. So the only other thing to do is to commit the branch. So we go to GitHub, and we go to Changes, and we say finished CRUD WAD, and commit and sync. Okay, so that's that. Practice WAD, we'll give it a 20-minute time for RX. Hope you enjoy it. It's a good one to do a few times to kind of really burn in how this whole kind of design pattern for doing CRUD works. And hope you enjoy it.